Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating story about trust, deception, and the total psychological curveball of a moral awakening. We're going to jump straight into the mind of a 15-year-old thief and see exactly what happens when the deeply cynical, survival-of-the-fittest worldview of a seasoned criminal collides with radical, almost careless trust.
I was still a thief when I met Anil. That is the incredibly blunt opening statement from our narrator. And what you really need to keep in mind right from the jump is that this kid is only 15 years old. But he already considers himself a highly experienced, very successful professional. He's a hustler, and like any good pro, he's always scanning the room for an easy mark. That's when he spots a 25-year-old guy named Anil at a wrestling match. Anil is tall, lean, super easygoing, and honestly, he just looks like the perfect simple victim. Our narrator's been in a bit of a dry spell lately, so he decides that getting into this guy's good graces is his next big move.
So how does a 15-year-old con artist operate? It's basically a three-step masterclass in manipulation. Step 1, hit him with some flattery. He tells Anil he looks like a bit of a wrestler himself, which always works. Step 2, completely fabricate an identity. He introduces himself as Hari Singh. Actually, he adopts a brand new alias every single month just to stay off the radar of the police and his former employers. And step 3, he offers to work and cook for Anil in exchange for a roof over his head and some food. Now the funny part here is that he absolutely cannot cook. Like his first meal is so spectacularly bad that Anil actually feeds it to a stray dog and tells him to pack his bags. But our young thief just kind of hangs around, flashing his most charming smile, and incredibly, it works. He scores a spot sleeping out on the balcony over the Jumna sweet shop, and Anil even promises to teach him how to actually cook, and more importantly, how to write.
This setup just brilliantly highlights the massive contrast between these two. It's a total clash of worlds. On one side, you have Hari Singh, the ultimate cynic. He's constantly hustling, secretly skimming about a rupee a day for himself out of the daily grocery budget. On the other side, you have Anil, who is just completely unbothered by rules or routines. He earns his money by fits and starts, writing for magazines, borrowing money one week, lending it out the next, and celebrating the second a check clears. Anil even gives his brand new teenage employee a key to the front door so he can come and go whenever he wants. The narrator even admits, hands down, Anil is the most trusting person he has ever met in his life.
Now here's where it gets really psychologically interesting. Anil's complete unorthodox trust totally short-circuits the thief's programming. Our narrator actually gets frustrated. He points out that it's easy to rob a greedy man, right? Because a greedy man can afford it. But a careless, trusting guy like Anil, half the time he doesn't even realize he's been robbed. For a seasoned criminal who takes serious pride in his craft, this lack of friction just drains all the thrill out of the job. It's literally no fun for him. So for almost a month, aside from skimming that daily grocery money, the thief doesn't pull any real jobs, simply because Anil's vibe is just so disarming.
But the stakes suddenly go through the roof. One evening, Anil comes home carrying a small bundle of cash. He had just sold a book to a publisher. That night, the thief watches like a hawk as Anil tucks the money right under his mattress. 600 rupees, all in 50s. Now, to put that into perspective, for a 15-year-old street kid, this is a phenomenal, life-altering amount of money. The thief instantly runs the numbers and realizes he could live like an oil-rich Arab for a solid week or two with that kind of cash. The temptation is just way too massive to ignore, and suddenly, the dormant thief inside him is wide awake and ready to work.
Later that night, while Anil is sleeping peacefully in this beam of moonlight coming in from the balcony, our narrator sits on the floor and starts doing the mental gymnastics required to betray the guy who literally took him in. He comes up with three main justifications. First, he tells himself, hey, I'm out of practice, I need to do some real work. Second, he rationalizes that Anil doesn't actually pay him a regular salary anyway. And third, the ultimate excuse, if he doesn't steal the money, Anil is just going to blow it all celebrating with his friends. So with his conscience conveniently silenced, he creeps over to the bed, silently slips his hand under the mattress, pulls out the notes, and bolts out into the night. And this kicks off a really intense physical and emotional roller coaster. He's running down the road, he's got the 600 rupees tied into the string of his pajamas. He completely ignores the ticket office, he's never bought a train ticket in his life, and sprints straight onto the platform. The 10:30 Lucknow Express is just starting to pull out. It would be incredibly easy to just jump into one of the carriages and disappear. But then, he freezes. For a reason he can't even articulate to himself, he just hesitates. He stands there and watches his getaway train speed off into the distance, leaving him totally alone on a dead platform. After that, the night just gets miserable. He wanders aimlessly through the bazaar, sits out in an open field called a Maidan while a freezing November wind howls, and finally ends up huddled under a clock tower at midnight in the pouring rain, feeling the stolen notes getting damp against his skin. So he's wandering alone in the dark, and his mind is just racing. Over his short career, he's basically become a behavioral profiler. He studied how different men react when they realize they've been robbed. The greedy man shows fear, the rich man shows anger, and the poor man just kind of shows acceptance. But when he pictures Anil discovering the theft, it hits him hard. Anil won't be scared, or mad, or resigned. He'll just be sad. But not because of the missing cash. It will be a profound sadness over the shattered trust. And right then, the thief realizes the gravity of what he's done. He hasn't just stolen a stack of paper, he's completely destroyed the faith another human being freely gave him.
Shivering there in the freezing rain with a wad of wet money, another massive realization strikes him. He thinks about exactly what he left behind in that room. It wasn't just a warm bed. It was Anil's promise to teach him how to write whole sentences. And this is the turning point. Because to this kid, whole sentences aren't just a grammar lesson. They represent an entirely different life. He realizes that, yeah, stealing is easy and getting caught is just as easy. But getting an education, learning to read and write, that could make him a truly big man, a clever, respected person. In the adrenaline rush of the heist, he totally forgot about the long game. He finally sees that education, which is only possible because of Anil's trust, is his one and only ticket to a real future.
So driven by this huge epiphany, he does something completely counterintuitive to every survival instinct he has. He goes back. Now, as any thief will tell you, it is infinitely harder to secretly return stolen goods than it is to steal them in the first place. He is absolutely terrified standing in the doorway in the moonlight. Anil is still dead asleep. The boy creeps up to the head of the bed, literally feeling Anil's breath on his hand. Moving as slowly as humanly possible, he finds the edge of the mattress and slides those damp, rain-soaked notes right back where he found them. He has technically undone the crime, but that wet money is basically a ticking time bomb just waiting for the morning.
And the next morning is the ultimate stress test. Our narrator wakes up late, only to find that Anil is already up and has made the tea. Then comes the moment of truth. Anil stretches out his hand, and he's holding a 50-rupee note. The thief's heart absolutely drops into his stomach. He thinks, this is it, I'm caught. But Anil isn't yelling, he isn't calling the cops. With total calm grace, he just says, I made some money yesterday. Now you'll be paid regularly. The kid takes the note, and his fingers brush against the paper. It's damp. It is still wet from the rain. There is absolutely no doubt. Anil knows everything. He knows what happened, he knows where the boy went, and he knows exactly why that money is wet. But instead of punishing him, Anil just smiles and says, today we'll start writing sentences.
Which brings us to this incredibly moving resolution. As the narrator says, he knew, but neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything. Think about that. Anil makes a conscious, deliberate choice to offer rehabilitation over punishment. No screaming, no guilt trip, no shame. He just quietly leaves the door open for the kid to do better. And the thief's reaction tells you everything you need to know. He smiles at Anil in his most appealing way, but unlike those fake, calculated smiles from earlier in the story, he tells us this smile came completely by itself. It was effortless. It's the very first genuine, unfiltered emotion we see from him, which proves that Anil's radical, silent trust actually managed to break right through his armor.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty profound question to chew on. Can silent forgiveness actually be more powerful than punishment? We just followed a hardened teenage criminal who wasn't scared of the police and didn't care about angry victims. But what completely stopped him in his tracks and actually rewired his identity was the crushing weight of a careless man's trust and the quiet grace of a wet 50-rupee note. It really makes you wonder about how we handle betrayal in our own lives, right? Maybe, just maybe, an act of silent grace has the power to transform a person in ways that retaliation never ever could. Think about that for a bit, and we'll see you in the next explainer.